Heyo, my name is Xander, and this is my vlog. Warning, I'm going to be talking about Game of Thrones, and that includes spoilers, so if you haven't caught up on the Game of Thrones TV series, there are spoilers ahead. Also, a trigger warning, I'm going to be talking about rape, and I fortunately have not had any experience with rape or anything like that, but if it is a trigger for you, I suggest that maybe you check out some of my other videos, because that's what I'm going to be talking about. The most recent episode of Game of Thrones has a scene at the end of it where Sansa Stark gets raped by her husband, Ramsay Bolton. Meanwhile, Reek is forced to watch. And Reek is actually Theon Greyjoy, who grew up with Sansa, so it's like double awful. I want to preface this with, I love Game of Thrones. I think it brings adult themes into a fantasy world and kind of has brought on this renaissance of interest in fantasy. So when explaining my hobbies of like, I'm gonna play D&D, that's that. Oh, it's like Game of Thrones kind of, but with more magic and I get to be a character. Oh, cool. That's a little bit self-serving, but you get the gist of it. One of the things that Game of Thrones does well is it takes the tropes that we're used to in a fantasy world, things like Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and kind of turns them on their head. When we see a heroic main character, we've been conditioned to know that he won't die because he's the main character of a fantasy series. He's the hero. And then Ned Stark happens and he gets his head chopped off. One of the things that they've toyed with is like, this is a brutal world. This is a world where war is not glamorized. It's heavy, it's dark, it's violent. And sex is one of the themes that they've kind of touched on throughout the whole series. People call the series Dragon Boobs because it's dragons and boobs, you know. The sex is what brought it into the mainstream. I have mixed feelings about the rape scene that just happened, and I want to go through both sides of it. A lot of the kerfuffle on the internet has been, I can't believe that Game of Thrones did this again. This is the third rape scene that they've had in the series. We're done with it. That's it. No more. I don't really think that that's fair. I mean, granted, you can watch and not watch whatever you want. That's totally up to you. But I think they've established in the world of Westeros, or in the world of Game of Thrones, that rape is kind of a common thing. Not that it's a good thing, it's always depicted horribly and uncomfortably, and it's not sexy, it's not supposed to turn you on, it's supposed to freak you out. And it's brought this conversation of rape to people who may not have talked about it before or didn't feel comfortable talking about it, but now there's this springboard of people to have an open dialogue about it. One of the arguments was that it wasn't necessary for the scene because Sansa has spent all of this time growing as a character and becoming a strong character with agency, and it was kind of all taken away with her. She had her hair dye washed out and she was back to doormat Sansa, who everybody walked over. I mean, she kind of went through an awful male relationship with Joffrey. So was there character development when we show them naturally behaving as we've established that they would? I don't know. I think that it might have set Sansa back a bit. But I don't think that there was anything else that she could have done, and I don't think that there was anything else that Ramsay could have done, given that we've established this is the type of character that he is. If it would have just cut and the rape was implied instead of explicitly shown, that's just as bad. Just because we were shown something doesn't make anything less awful. In fact, now, because we weren't even shown the actual act, we were shown the reaction to it, and we're having conversations now because of that. If it had just cut and not mentioned it, nobody would be talking about it, or it would just be this nudge nudge wink wink thing and we would move on. And I think it's something that needs to have a discussion. Another thing that was brought up was that it takes the power away from Sansa and everything that she's worked for and giving it to Reek, because now Reek has control over her life. He knows that she was raped. He's the only one that could possibly do anything about it, but he was kind of brainwashed by Ramsay. I can see that, but I think that it will come into play later on in the story, because Reek is a character that was created from Theon after all of this brainwashing and horrible things, and I think it's going to take a similarly horrible thing to snap him out of it. And this reaction of watching his basically sister get raped by the person who conditioned him, it might be the thing that sways him over to her side. In fact, I'm positive that it is. So I do think that it was an important plot device, but I don't know. See, I go back and forth in my mind. I'm just as conflicted as anybody else, but I don't think that it was the wrong decision. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm always checking it. I try to answer every comment, so if you have opinions on the matter, just go ahead and let me know, and I'll try to talk back, and then we can work this out, because it was a very emotional scene, and I don't think a lot of media does this. If you feel like it, you can tweet out to me at Xanderific, that's with 2 R's and 1 F, and we can continue the conversation on Twitter. And make sure that you subscribe and check out the rest of my videos. I talk about nerdy things and other things. This was pretty heavy. I'm not normally this deep, but there you have it.